Card King, here I come. Hello, sports fans, sports collectors, and all hobbyists. Welcome to the Card King Sports and Variety Show. I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the program this morning, I welcome in former IBF super featherweight boxing champion of the world. I welcome in Carlos El Famoso Hernandez. Carlos, it's an honor to have you. Always honored to speak with a world champion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Carlos, I want to go back. You grew up in Southeast LA. Give us a sense of how life was like for you growing up in your old neighborhood and your inspiration on becoming a fighter.
Well, I grew up more in the South, almost South Central area, and it's in South LA, and we would live pretty close to the Olympic Auditorium, and it was a pretty bad neighborhood where I grew up. Just I guess like LA used to be back in the day, pretty hard, and so. But my father used to take me to the boxing gyms, like. It was like the I don't know, it was like the mecca of boxing, which was Main Street Gym, and he used to take me to the Olympic Auditorium, which is the mecca of boxing in the West Coast. And so I used to watch all these big name fighters as a 4 or 5 year old kid, and going into the gym, but I really didn't like boxing. I didn't really understand it, where I just as a kid I just saw men holding each other or slugging each other. I felt it dirty, sweaty, and spit all over. I didn't really like it. But growing up, I felt like, growing up in a neighborhood that you had to fight. I wasn't one of those kind of kids that was going to fold. I had to hold my ground and fight. And more than anything, at that time, it was more fighting about like an identity because, I'm Salvadorian. And everyone would say, Mexican. I was like, nah, man. And so, we start fighting. And that's how I grew up, and it was about fighting. And even though I didn't like it in the beginning, but I loved it as a teenager, that's when I knew this was going to be something I was going to be for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and reading your career, Carlos, I understand you always had in your mind that you wanted to be a champ of something. Either whether that was in karate, boxing, you wanted to be that role model for your country, right?
Absolutely, especially when with the war, the Civil War, how it was up against each other, as brothers, we were fighting, and it just felt weird, it felt sad, and I wanted more than anything to do something to bring the country together as one. And I know there's a lot of division. I know it's political, but I didn't want that. I just wanted us to be one nation and support me. And it wasn't like I was fighting for the rich or the poor. I was fighting for everybody. So, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted as a kid. When the war started, I didn't go to El Salvador for many years because of the war. And so it was very sad. It was very sad and almost traumatizing.
Amazing. You mentioned your dad before. I know you owe a lot to him. He was a hardworking man from what I read. He did everything to enroll you in activities, keep you busy, keep you engaged, right? Keep you off the streets, right?
Correct. I mean, the guy had, at times, he had 3 jobs. He was working graveyard, then he'll come home. Not even come home, go to his second job. It was a part-time, and then it was like a 3-hour part-time. Then go back home and go to sleep, then wake up like around in the afternoon and go do another job for an hour, So he was a hard-working man, even though, it was a family. I had my parents with me. I grew up with my parents. They were really never there because they were always working. And it was kind of sad because, I basically grew up without them, even though they were working to keep a roof over our head, and so I understood that, I understood that they were working their butts off to have a roof over our heads, have a bed to sleep on, and have food to eat. And so it was kind of tough. It was tough, and then growing up, moving to Bellflower, there's a lot of Hispanics and a lot of blacks, and so there's a lot of like division there, a lot of fights, and so I started hanging around the wrong crowd, and my dad didn't want me to. He didn't want me to fall in the streets or go hanging out like in the corners or by the liquor stores or anything like that, or at the park. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to grab you, this kid, and I'm going to put him in karate. First he put me in swimming, then baseball, swimming, karate. And I really excelled in karate. That was very, very kind of life-changing almost because of the discipline, and I really, really liked it. But I wanted something a little bit more because I was still getting a little bit in trouble in the streets. You still had to fight. But it was more of a, you can't really do karate when you're fighting in the streets, so it's more like, street fights. And so I had to learn how to fight, and my dad took me to a boxing gym, and that first day, it just changed my life going to the boxing gym.
Man, now, what was your mom's reaction? Was she like nervous that you're joining a contact sport? How was her reaction to this?
Well, my mom back in those days, she didn't really have a word. It was kind of like male dominant kind of home, and so
right.
She was mainly just very kind of subservient at that time, and things changed. But at that time, she was very, very quiet and just pray for me, go to church and listen to what my father had to say.
Huh. All right. So then your first pro fight, let's talk about that. I understand it was a draw. What else do you remember most about that day as far as preparation, the experience, your first debut on the big stage? Talk about that first fight you had.
All right. Well, I was already in college. I was going through the college, trying to do something. I was out of boxing for probably a couple of years now, out of the amateur scene. And then I saw some of the guys that went to the Olympics and that were getting ready to go to the Olympics, and I'm like, gosh darn it, some of these guys I used to train with, and I was like, dude, I should have been there. I should have tried. And because I stopped that like around 18 years old. There was a bad decision for me to go to the Goodwill Games, and I was like, gosh darn it. I got disenchanted with boxing, with the amateur style, and I didn't really like it. I had more of a pro style from day one. I was training and sparring with professional champions at 16, 17 years old when I barely had a few amateur fights. And that's where I feel like I got my schooling. I got my schooling in the gym with real world champions that were great mentors. And that's what happened. And so I saw these guys on TV or in the newspaper, and I was like, oh, man, I got to do something. I'm going to turn pro because I got to be there. I got to do this. And I still like boxing, but my father, he like, you know what, you got to go to school, get an education, all that. Like, you know what, just give me 1 year, and if it doesn't go well for me, I'll go back to school. He's like, all right. So I never went back, even though after my first pro fight, I got a draw. But that was kind of like, I just turned pro on a whim, It was like all of a sudden, it was like, you know what, I'm just going to turn pro. And I was on the track team for college, so I felt like I was in really good shape. And I was in good shape, but I wasn't in that boxing shape. So I gave everything I had in the first 2 rounds against the guy who I looked at, and I said, oh, my gosh, I'm going to knock this fool out. And so he took everything I dished out in the first 2 rounds. In the last 2 rounds, I could barely keep my hands up, my arms up, and he was coming back. So thank God I at least ended up with the draw.
I mean, you must have been in great shape. I mean, just to remember, for our listening audience to remember, you were LA Golden Gloves champ, right?
Oh, yes. I was, Golden Gloves champ. That was like in 88, 87, 88, 89. But now, here in 92, I wasn't really a boxer anymore. I was more of an athlete, but it was in a boxing athlete. You know what I'm saying? It was different. You know, you could be in really good shape. I've trained professional soccer players, but once they get in the ring, they can't deal with it. They can't handle it. It's another kind of condition.
We're talking with former boxing champ Carlos El Famoso Hernandez. Carlos, after that draw, you really began to build momentum, and you really got in the ring with some heavy-duty competitors. What was your training regiment? What was your preparation for the upcoming fights after that first draw? What were you doing? Were you a jogger? Were you lifting weights? Give us a sense of your training prior to getting into the ring.
More than anything, it was a lot of that boxing shape. You know, hitting the bag, being in shape was no problem. I used to love running. I was a runner, so I loved the running part. But when it came to keeping my hands up and throwing punches, that's what I trained my body for. I got a bag, put it in the house, in the backyard, and trained every day at night, whenever I could, just to keep my arms from not getting tired. And so I would, more than anything, guys that do all these other extra stuff, which is good, I guess. It's just in my day, it was more about boxing condition. If you understand what I'm saying.
Now, your road to the title belt, let's go through that if we can, Carlos. First attempt, I believe, was against Chicanito, right? That was a classic historic fight.
It was with,
right? It was Chicken.
Yeah. He was actually one of my mentors, and he gave me my first title shot.
Okay, so that was the first attempt. And then you had that second fight against Hall of Famer Mayweather. Talk about that. How was that experience for you?
Well, it was probably one of the best experiences I could say in my life. It was just a very good experience. Going through the whole thing, the training, the traveling, the intensity, the pressure. I guess you could say pressure that I had, which was the adrenaline that I built, and from a country, because now my country's expecting me to be champion of the world, so they knew that I was going to fight Mayweather, who was already a great champion. He just recently destroyed easily, what's his name, not Castillo, but Corrales.
Okay.
So I was his next opponent after that, and I knew I was going into the Lion's Den, fighting in his backyard, but I did train very, very hard. In fact, I believe that was probably the fight where I was at my fittest. I weighed in at 128. I was in tremendous shape, running about 15 miles, not every day, but every other 3 days I'd be running 15 miles. I did a lot of sprints. It was just a lot of great training for a fight against Mayweather, and I had at that time, I had one of the best trainers ever, which, is Amilcar Brusa, who worked with Carlos Monzon. So, the guy was, just a professor. He basically knew how to fight a Mayweather. It's just unfortunately that I didn't win, but it was a great fight where I gave it my best. I gave it my all, and everyone in the arena that were booing me were cheering for me at the end. It was just like a Cinderella story.
And we got a little clip because that fight also made history in other ways. Let's hear a little clip of that Mayweather fight.
Sure.
Meanwhile, Hernandez Hernandez is just digging away, trying to stay chest to chest with Mayweather. Gets a chance to hit Floyd after the referee said stop.
4.
And this is going to be called a knockdown against Floyd Mayweather.
7.
And he motioned Jim about his hand.
Box.
So there's a turn of events in the potential scoring of the fight, as suddenly Floyd Mayweather is knocked down, and that, of course, will be a point to the advantage of Hernandez. Let's go to
wincing as he goes back to his corner.
Keep the jab work. Whip it around anyway. Get off the hand for a minute. It's hurt bad. Okay, quick. I know you ain't gonna quit. Don't worry about that. But I want you. Still gotta use the jab, keep fainting. Listen, draw him into the right uppercut. All right? Pull the jab out there, let him come to you, and shoot the right uppercut in the middle. All right? No problem.
Keep banging him to the body.
You think about
banging him to the body.
Shoot the right uppercut.
A short left to the head. A delayed reaction. I'm just curious if he went down more because his hand hurt him than because he was hit.
It wasn't because of the punch.
He hit.
It wasn't because of the punch. Yeah, and it was called a knockdown.
Amazing, champ. That was round 6. You made the news, becoming the first to knock down Floyd Mayweather. Left hook, huh?
Well, let me just get this make clear, is that it wasn't like a knockdown where I hit him and he went down. I believe he just hurt his hand. I was on top, ready to land the left hook, which I did, but then he took a knee.
Hello?
Damn.
Right. He took a knee, and I think his wrist was injured also because he was hitting you, but I mean you wouldn't go down.
Of course, no, I wouldn't go down. It was one of those rocky moments. It was just he couldn't hurt me. He couldn't do anything that was. I mean, he beat me by points, and he scored. I did receive a fat swelling on the bridge of my nose, but I wasn't going down. I wasn't going to lose in my head. I wasn't going to lose. I lost. I won inside. Inside, you have that where you did your best. I felt so proud in that fight because I gave it my best. I gave it my all, and I guess that's what I want to teach my kids is when you give it your best, you give it your all, that's winning.
Yeah, but that's never mentioned. I mean, Mayweather's a tremendous fighter. He's a Hall of Famer, but that's never mentioned that you never went down, and I believe, I looked at that fight a few times. You never went down. Mayweather injured his wrist because he was pounding you, but you didn't go down. And I even read that Mayweather said there was a pain in his spine that he felt, punching you. And that's never really mentioned.
Wow, I never heard that.
Yeah. No, I mean,
I'm sure,
definitely.
I'm sure it was a sharp pain,
Yeah, and then now let's talk about the big one against David Santos.
Then that was obviously the greatest night of my career, fighting in front of that then president from El Salvador, Francisco Flores, may God rest his soul, and Roberto Duran and Alexis Arguello, fellow Central Americans that went to support me, and it was a sad card as well. I mean, you had in the undercard you had Juan Manuel Marquez, you had Cotto. It was a really nice card. It just unfortunately it wasn't really even that big like today. You had Cesar Bazan fighting on the card. So I mean, you had really great champions that fought on that card.
Amazing. So then, okay. So now, you become champion. So I mean, did your marketing capabilities become big? I mean, now you're champion of the world.
Yeah, of course. I I was paid very, very well with sponsors from my country because I kept a clean image. Around that time, there was a disease, if you could say, if you will, kind of epidemic, where it was a lot of gang members, a lot of drugs going through El Salvador, and so there were a lot of killings with the gangs, with 18th Street and La Mara Salvatrucha, which all comes from L.A. Anyway, so I kind of know that, I know those kind of people. If I have family that were involved in that, but what made me so happy, and is probably one of the icing on the cake, is that when I fought that night was the lowest crime they had the whole year because of my fight, and
really?
Yes, it was a beautiful thing to hear that everyone was watching to support me, and to this day, people just contact me and thank me for what I've done for the country, because I'm the only world champion that's ever been champion of any sport from El Salvador.
I mean, you definitely achieved the highest mark an athlete can achieve, being a world champion. So there's no question about that. I have a couple of minutes left. I want to get this question in. Champ, with all the controversy going on for years now in the NFL with head concussions, head injuries, what do you tell an amateur who wants to box? Is it a concern?
It could be. Let me tell you something. That I go to the Mayo Clinic over in Vegas. They check my brain every year, and thank God I have a great brain. Like if I never boxed before, and I thank God for that. I've had 53 professional fights, and my fights have been toe to toe. I'm not that sweet technical fighter. I'm just a head-banging kind of guy. And for me to receive news like that and see the scans and see my brain, it's unfortunate to see other fighters that had less fights who've had other kind of style that are not as dangerous as mine, I guess you could say. And they come out really, really banged up with pugilistic dementia. And I just thank God. So what I would tell an amateur is mainly to just move your head, move side to side, try to obviously hit and not get hit. That's my main, I guess, advice I could give you. Boxing is a brutal sport. It is. And but it is a beautiful sport. That's the beauty of it. It's try to hit and not get hit. And I think one of the things that have helped me is my style has been inside so much that probably I didn't give you the chance to get that range and that full power to hit me in the head because I was always inside.
No question. You were very, very fast. You knew how to turn your head. Everyone can just watch some of your fights on YouTube. You're very, very quick on your feet, always on your toes. No doubt about it. So champ, what have you been doing now? What's going on in the life of the champ El Famoso Hernandez?
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you. Well, anyway, I moved to San Antonio, Texas for this is my 13th year now. I've been here, but I come and go to LA and back. But right before the pandemic, I was ready to open a boxing gym in Huntington Park, and then I was looking at MacArthur Park area, mainly to market to my Central Americans. But because of the pandemic, the deal fell through. I was going to partner up with a business to have a building, and so at the end they left. They went to Fresno, and so the deal went awry. And so I came back to San Antonio. I'm taking care of my kids because I have full custody of my children. So I'm here taking care of them. But I just formed my own company, which is Carlos Famoso Realty. And I'm actually I'm I'm working as a real estate agent, and I have real estate agents that work with me and for me, and that's how we're. That's what I'm doing now. And I used to have a gym here, but the gym here is it's very hard, very difficult. I mean, this is one of the most obese cities in the country, so it's kind of hard to have a boxing gym here.
Okay, cool. So let's mention it here. Carlos Famoso Realty, right? Is there a website?
That's correct. No, I just started this actually probably like 3 weeks ago. We just got the LLC like 2 weeks ago, and we're just getting everything sorted out. But we're just working on that now. That's what I'm doing. That's where I'm putting my all my energy into.
Congratulations. And just my final question, do you ever think boxing will get back to its golden years of the 1980s? It was so popular in the 1980s. Well, what's your insight on that?
Honestly, it's going to be kind of hard with how people think nowadays with the new woke mentality. I don't know. It's very hard. I do, and I am happy that there are great fighters like Bud Crawford, Terence Crawford. You have Errol Spence, and Pacquiao is still. So I think there's still hope for boxing in the future with Teofimo Lopez carrying the torch, and other young fighters that are up and coming that will be the future of boxing. And so I believe that there will be a golden age for boxing again.
Champ.
Like a resurrection, kind of, if you will.
Champ, it was a great job. Listen, I really appreciate, honor to have you on the program. Great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and God bless you, and I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
You too. Take care of yourself.
All right, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was the legendary former champion, Carlos El Famoso Hernandez. Until a couple of weeks, we'll see you soon. Happy collecting to all.